Good evening, everybody, and welcome to my YouTube channel for another episode of Cooking for a Picky Eater. Tonight, I'm going to be making a Thai coconut curry chicken soup. One of the things I really like about this soup is it's really packed full of flavor, and it incorporates pretty much everything that Sean likes. It's got the only meat protein that he will eat, which is chicken, but then it also incorporates other wonderful flavors such as coconut. And then the spices really help to bring out the flavor of both the chicken and the coconut. And it's really very good. It's got a little bit of spice to it. It's got a little bit of tomato in it, not too much. And then it's got some rice in there. I've got some almost instant long grain rice that goes into this recipe. So stay tuned, and I hope you enjoy this recipe. To get started, let's talk about our ingredient list. Obviously, since it is a chicken soup, we do have some boneless, skinless chicken thighs, and the reason that we're using thighs instead of breasts in this recipe is we want the chicken to fall apart and almost be shredded in this recipe, so there's a little bit of chicken in every bite. Also, this extracts a lot of flavor so that you can use a less sodium concentrated chicken stock, which will be another ingredient that we use. I tend to use about 5 cups of water in this recipe, and then for every cup of water I add 1 teaspoon of chicken base. It does the trick. It's not too much salt. In the recipe also I have some carrots, and on sale today at Wegmans they had what they call rainbow carrots. There is a purple carrot in this, but I want to show what they look like before I cut them up. And when I cut the carrots up, I'm going to be cutting them into about 1/2 inch size pieces, and I've got about 3 cups of carrots. And also, we're going to be adding some bell pepper to this recipe. I have 4 medium-sized bell peppers, and I just picked a couple of different varieties just for some color in the recipe. We are going to be using about a half teaspoon of some grated ginger. I like to use fresh ginger. It's very bright in this recipe. We're going to be using 1 large Spanish onion in this recipe. And then toward the end of the recipe, we're going to be adding 1 of the smaller cans of tomato paste. This one here is 6 ounces. That should do the trick. And then we are going to be adding 1 can of cream of coconut. This is a 15-ounce can, so we're not going to be using this entire can. A lot of stores will have 12-ounce cans. That's probably closer to what we're going to be using. You want to make sure that when you get this, that it is the one that is sweetened. And there are different brands that make it different ways. Goya is the brand that does it without the preservatives. As I mentioned before, Sean likes to eat as naturally as possible. You would not believe the preservatives in some of the other brands. So that's why I chose that brand. And then at the very end, we're going to add a little bit of light cream just to cut the acidity of the tomato that we're putting in there. So what we're going to do to get started is to brown our chicken. I'm going to get this area cleaned up, and I'll be right back. We're going to start by heating up maybe about a tablespoon of olive oil in the bottom of our pot. And then we are going to season our chicken thighs with a little bit of salt and pepper. And that's just simply to help bring out the chicken flavor as we begin to brown the meat. So we get a little bit of salt. We're going to put a little bit of black pepper. And be generous with the pepper. This will help season the broth as we move forward in the recipe. So these are 6 chicken thighs. Give me 1 second to wash my hands. And we're going to let them get a little bit of color on them. As soon as we finish browning these, I'll be right back. The chicken is in here getting nice and brown. All I'm doing is turning it every couple of minutes to make sure we get the color even on all sides. Don't be afraid to walk away from this if you need to do that for a couple of minutes. We are going to be deglazing this pan a little bit, so you really don't have to worry about if it sticks a little bit. Not a big deal. This is also a recipe that can be finished in the slow cooker. If you wanted to begin this and then throw it in there for a couple of hours, you absolutely could do that. And at that point, it would be a meal you could just walk away from. If you're going to do that, I would suggest browning this in a cast iron skillet, taking the thighs out of the skillet into the slow cooker, and then completing the recipe in the slow cooker. The vegetables are not going to be sauteed at all. They're going to go in right when the broth goes in. They're going to get nice and soft. But when you put everything together, this is, like I mentioned, this is something you can literally walk away from. So at this point, we're going to talk about spices. The meat is browned in there. We're going to add quite a bit of curry powder. And this is a yellow curry powder. And we're going to add probably about 7 tablespoons of curry powder. And it is a lot of curry powder in this recipe. To that, we are going to add a little bit of celery salt, maybe a teaspoon of celery salt, maybe slightly less than a teaspoon of celery salt. So that's going to go in there. And then to that, we are going to add a 6-ounce can of tomato paste. And that's going to go right in with the chicken thighs at this point. All right, we're going to give that a stir. All right, get all that working. And then we're going to add enough chicken stock just to cover the chicken thighs. Maybe slightly more than covering the chicken thighs. This is going to be the base to which we add our vegetables. Okay. Now you can come back and add some water to this later if it looks like it's going to be too thick at the end of the recipe. But at this point, what we're pretty much going to be doing is braising this chicken. And we're going to let the chicken cook a little bit. And this is going to make this chicken nice and tender. So this would be the point at which you could begin the process in the slow cooker. If you're doing this in the slow cooker, you would just simply add the rest of your ingredients at this point and walk away from it. We're going to put a lid on this, and we're going to let this simmer for about 20-25 minutes, and then we'll be coming back to work on adding the vegetables. While our chicken thighs are simmering in the sauce, there is some prep work that we can get done for the next step, and that is to peel our ginger that we're going to be grating into that. And to do that, I'm using a paring knife, nice and sharp, and then I'm simply going to scrape at the skin, and it will come right off quite easily just by running the paring knife over the ginger. And as you can see, the skin comes right off. Be careful when you're doing this that you only take off enough skin for the part of the ginger root that you're going to be using. And then when you're finished, make sure you wrap it in some plastic wrap or put it into a sandwich baggie so that it will not dry out. Oh, okay, our chicken thighs have been simmering for about 20-25 minutes, and it's time to give them a stir and to add our vegetables. So as I mentioned earlier, we're going to be adding 1 large chopped Spanish onion, and this is going to help with some of the sweetness also in this. We are going to add about 3 cups of chopped carrots. Maybe not quite 3 cups or it's going to overflow our pot. But if you have a bigger pot, feel free to add lots and lots of vegetables. These are going to be really, really soft when we serve this. So if your family likes a lot of vegetables, feel free to add some more of those. We are going to add 3 or 4 medium-sized bell peppers. Those are going to go right in as well. Give that a stir. Make sure everything's nice and incorporated. Okay. And then we're going to put the lid back on this, and we're going to let this simmer for about 40 minutes until everything is nice and soft. And then when we come back, it won't take much to finish this recipe. Okay, this has been simmering for about 40 minutes. It's actually a little bit more than a simmer, so it's definitely ready for this step. We are going to be taking the chicken thighs, all 6 of them, out of the rest of the soup that has been simmering. And we're going to take 2 forks, and we're going to shred the meat. And you'll notice at this point, even though we had this packed with vegetables, they've started releasing some of their natural liquids as they've been cooking in here. And so there is a lot more broth in this soup right now than there was when we looked at it earlier. So, like I said, we're going to take 2 forks and we're going to shred the chicken. So we're just pulling this apart into bite-sized pieces, and then we're going to put this back into the soup, and then when we come back in about 10 minutes after we put this back in, I'll show you how to finish this wonderful, wonderful soup. Okay, our soup has been simmering again for another 10 minutes after we put the chicken back in, and it's time to finish the soup. So we're going to remove the lid. We're going to grate in about a teaspoon of fresh ginger. Okay, the ginger is in. We are going to add half a teaspoon of chili powder. We're going to add a half teaspoon of ground cumin. And we're going to add about 12 ounces of the cream of coconut. So that'll be about 2/3 of this can. Okay, we're going to give this a stir. And then what we're going to do is we're going to take one of the carrots just to make sure that they're completely cooked and soft. And indeed they are. So what we're going to do is we're going to just give that a few minutes to allow that cream of coconut to get incorporated in here. And as soon as we come back from doing that, I'll show you how to finish the soup. Okay, and we're down to the last few steps of this soup. I have turned the heat up slightly to about medium-high, just so that it rolls a little bit. We're going to add 2 cups of long grain instant rice. This rice takes about 10 minutes to cook. So what we're going to do is we're going to give this a stir into here, and we're going to put the lid on. We're going to let it cook for about 10 minutes. And then what we're going to do then, as soon as that's all finished, we're going to turn it off the heat. We're going to add a little bit of light cream to this just to cut the acidity, and it will be ready to serve. Okay, the rice is finished cooking. Take a taste at this point. Check for salt and pepper. I tasted this one. It sounds great. Tastes great, rather. So what I've done is I've turned the heat off, and that way we won't curdle the cream. So we're going to add probably about a 1/2 cup to a 3/4 of a cup of the light cream. And all we're doing here is we're cutting the acidity from the tomato paste. We're going to give that a stir. And then we're ready to serve it. And this soup is absolutely delicious, packed full of flavor. And I think even your pickiest of eaters, as long as they like chicken and coconut, will really enjoy this soup. And I hope you do too.